Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Yeshiva League Pass Tip-Off Podcast. I'm Ari Wickus, joined by the great Akiva Poppers. This is episode 4. We are excited to get going on this episode. We have a great guest, which we've highlighted on the Instagram. Roni Huemann from the Frisch Cougars will be joining us. And before we get into that Cool Kippahs interview and our player of the week, we wanted to just talk to you about our sponsors. First, we'd like to talk to you about Holy Schnitzel, one of the best places in all of the country to eat in the 5 towns in Jersey, in the city, Staten Island. They have locations everywhere. If you are looking to grab a post-game meal, a pre-game meal, you can get whatever you want there. They have some food as far as salads, wraps, anything you can imagine. They also do catering and just a great place. I've eaten there once too many times myself. It's just awesome. That is Holy Schnitzel. So check them out and thank you for their sponsorship. Our other sponsor right now is CoolKippahs.com. CoolKippahs is the place to get all your Judaic gear. I'm actually wearing one of their kippahs right here on my big head here. They are great. They can customize anything. They're great for bar mitzvahs, weddings, anything, parties, 50th anniversaries, for whatever you want to do, you want to celebrate. They're a great place. Also, we'd like to mention their new division, Kippahs_exclusive, which is coming on Instagram. They've actually started their Instagram account. They are going to be starting with limited kippah drops. Yes, the Jewish world has started to work in this collaboration of getting a little small sample size. They make things in limited editions. Their first one coming out is Pause. Check them out on Instagram, Kippahs_exclusive. Really cool. Get your hands on it. It's a really big initiative of Cool Kippahs, and check them out. And now, Akiva, without further ado, let's bring in our player of the week, our CoolKippahs.com player of the week, Roni Huemann from the Frisch Cougars.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Excited to get this going.
It's our pleasure, Roni. So we're glad to have you. We're going to fire away with some questions. The great thing is this: some people have asked us, do you give the questions to the guys beforehand? We're like, heck no. These are athletes. They perform on the big stage. We're not going to give them any practice tips. So we're going to fire away. First of all, congratulations on the success you've had early on your season. You've kind of exceeded a lot of expectations, at least outside of the Frisch walls. People didn't really see you guys coming out with this great start. You lost a lot last year, and congratulations on that. So with that, the segue is, what were your real expectations coming into the season? And I know every year we want to win a championship. We want to do this, but you were in the championship loss last year. You lost your entire starting unit, I believe, was all senior-driven team. I know you and Ezra Berkowitz were players on the team off the bench. But expectations coming into the season, what were they? What were your goals? And, tell us a little bit about that.
I think as much as everyone else besides, our team didn't believe in us, I think we were pretty confident going in. My sophomore year in JV, we made it to the semis. We lost to Magan. In that game, a lot of us, that game stuck with us a lot. It was a very tough game, but, we made it that far, and we kind of, going into that game in sophomore year, we were very confident that we could win a championship. So, coming back to that league this year where, we're the oldest, I think we had expectations to go far, and I think our real goal was to win a championship. But I think, talking with Coach Brian and Coach Shlomo just about Yeshiva League ball in general and, the way the season goes, we set a goal before the season just to get to the playoffs and to get a 1 seed, because we believe that, getting a 1 seed is a big advantage. And we really thought that if we were able to get that 1 seed, which we thought we would, then, our goal from there is just to win every game and eventually win a championship. But I would say we were pretty confident, and our goal was to win a championship and still is to win a championship.
Gotcha. And what do you think? What's been key to the success early on? Has it been the defense? Has it been your offensive sets? I mean, what's been the key coming out that has really propelled you to that successful start?
I think definitely for sure our defense. The first practice, the first tryout, right when we get in, Coach puts us in a 2-3, which is what we play, and he says, literally throw everything out the door about a 2-3, and he's going to teach us a whole new style of that set. I think what we have and what we do is unique, and I think that shows. Our defense has been pretty good up to this point, holding teams early in the game for sure to low scores, Ramaz, Magan. And, as coach says, and we believe in this style of play, he would rather us win the game 25-24 than, 63-50. So our goal really is, to play hard defense. A lot of times our defensive possessions will go on for a minute, and then on offense, just, take it slow, play clean ball. So I would say our defense for sure is our biggest attribute.
Right, absolutely. Well, you've done that very well. I've seen that on many occasions. Poppers, what do you got for Roni? I mean, he's another savvy veteran in the interview here. So let's see if we could we'd get him off his game. He's right on point here.
Well, I think we should continue talking though about this season and the success you've had, specifically the last 3 games or the 2 games before this past game, the Ramaz game that you mentioned, and the Mag and David game as well. Coming into those games, they're both road games. Do you view them as, let's take it one game at a time, versus like, hey, we have 2 huge road games coming up, let's try to win one of these? And also in terms of how your guys were perceived versus how you performed in those games, did you feel kind of like a chip on your shoulder to prove that you were better than how you were perceived?
Yeah, so before those 2 games, we had a little bit of a break over Thanksgiving. And over that Thanksgiving break, you see a lot of family, you see a lot of people, and everyone asks about the team. So we were proud to say we were 5-0 up to that point. But, looking ahead quickly to those 2 games, we knew they were tough matchups, but I think that kind of excites us as a team. Like the games before that, some of them were tough, some of them not so tough. So even though we were 5-0, people were still doubting us. There was still a lot to prove. So, yeah, I mean, over that, we saw them as 2 big games, but we really do take one game at a time because we believe that anything can happen in any game. I think that's a major point of Yeshiva League basketball just in general, that I really believe anyone can beat anyone, and you have to stay focused one game at a time. And I think if you look too much ahead, you're just going to get caught in the moment and you're just not going to be able to win. So I think we definitely took it one game at a time, but it was also impossible to ignore that, right after that hump of Ramaz, you got to go straight to Magan. But I think that after that tough loss to Ramaz, we kind of felt like we deserved to win that game, and it got taken away from us. So, as much anger as we felt after that game, we were able to channel all of that and just put it towards Magan, and I think that definitely helped us a lot and propelled us to eventually win that game.
Were you surprised by how Magan guarded you in that game? That they junked for most of the game, all the game?
What do you say?
Were you surprised that they played junk defense primarily there?
Yeah, I mean, they played a box and one at the beginning, which, a little disrespectful, but I think we put them in their place on that pretty quickly.
Wait, who was the box on?
Originally, I think it was Eitan Slasky right away. And I think so. I'm not sure. But then they went into a 2-3, and Noah Fishman, shout out to him, just kind of dominated, and then they went back into a box. But like I said, like we focus a lot more on the defensive end. So if they want to play a junk defense on us, they're still going to have to go out on offense and score. And our defense kind of didn't allow them to do that early on in the game. And I think that was the key. Like our offense, we scored, but without the good defense that we played, we wouldn't have been able to win the game regardless. So, I mean, yeah, it was definitely a little disrespectful, but I think we just channel that, and we don't care. Like if that's what they want to do, let them do it. We'll take the game from them, and that's what we did.
Right. And you did. You won that game convincingly, which I think put a lot of people, my Poppers and myself. We looked at the score, caught a little game in the live stream. It was like, whoa, that was a statement game. You guys ended up winning by 18, 15, but you were pretty much in control by 10 plus throughout the game, at least for when I was watching. So that was a great job on Frisch's part. So my next question is this: who would you say is your biggest rival? And I know, Frisch has a couple, so I want to know your opinion. Who's your biggest rival, and describe that atmosphere playing them at home and then playing them away. So what would that be? And talk to us about that, and take us through that.
Oh man, that's a tough question. Everyone hates Frisch.
It's a personal question to you, like who you feel when you play each year. This is the biggest game, the biggest crowd, the biggest bragging rights throughout the schools.
Yeah, I would say SAR. Part of, just personally for me, I have a lot of friends that go to SAR, a lot of, longtime Englewood buddies. So it's always fun to see them in the game, chirping at me. And I also think like Frisch and SAR is just a fun rivalry. Hockey last year, there was a championship game and Sting Night, we went there. I think playing there for me is definitely more fun than playing in Frisch. Those fans are crazy. They've said some crazy things. They've done some crazy things at the free throw line. But I know I personally just love, people yelling at me instead of for me. I think that gets me going more for sure. And you always put a little more into the game when it's a rivalry game for sure. So we opened up the season at SAR. And that was kind of a big statement game for us just to set the tone for the season. And we went in there. It was a packed crowd. And I think, we set a big statement there and won that game.
That probably actually probably helped propel your start of the season. I mean, that was, like you said, a big game, and being, you're saying it's one of your biggest rival, how you look at it, winning on their court, again, pretty convincingly throughout the game, leading, that probably helped you guys, set up for the success you've had.
Yeah.
Right. Just Poppers. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious more with SAR, because last year, you almost played them 4 times. You almost got them in the championship game. For that Sarachek game, did you feel that there was an extra edge to it because it was SAR? Did you feel the pressure because it was the 3rd time you had played them, and there's this whole idea of, it's hard to beat a team 3 times?
Yeah, so we definitely spoke about that before the game, that whole idea of how hard it is to beat a team 3 times. I think that SAR team, specifically with those group of players, was a very special team. Those kids have been playing together their whole life. And that was kind of known throughout the league. Like, they were very well respected just in terms of how well they played together. And, something that stood out to me was they always just looked so comfortable and confident on the court. And I remember being in layup lines in Sarachek, and Akiva Shanzer walks in like 15, 20 minutes before the game, like in his slides. I remember turning to a teammate, like, this kid looks like he just rolled out of bed. Like, they're not taking us seriously. Like, what's going on? Like, and we were so mad from the championship game. Like, and, that rivalry last year was there for the same guys above me, like it is for me. So there was so much that went into that game. And we felt like they kind of weren't taking us seriously. That's just how I felt when I saw all of them coming into the game. And then, obviously we know how that game went. So, and I think that definitely added fuel to the fire for this year's rivalry. Even though, not everyone on our team or their team for that matter was played in that game, there's still a lot of talking going on. SAR, they talk a lot off the court. And I think that added to it too. But that Sarachek game was a special game. We kind of felt a little disrespected just coming into it. And then I guess they beat us.
I mean, can you also speak to the championship against North Shore and what it was like playing in a championship game and also playing with Alex, both in that game and just in general over the course of the season?
Yeah, I'm sorry. 1 second. Before you, when you mentioned championship game, I forgot to mention that going back all the way to Mariah days, we played SAR in 2 straight championships because of COVID, but we were online to play them again. And that definitely also adds to that little rivalry. Forgot to mention.
Roni, you don't have to justify the hate for the rival school. We got it. Don't worry, it's all good.
Right, I'm curious what would have happened if SAR beat North Shore in the semifinals. How the Sarachek, how the Yeshiva League championship would have gone there.
Right.
Yeah, it would have been crazy. So yeah, championship games, very, very different type of game. I'll tell you that. Like, there's a ton of buildup. That's a very long week. That week before, practice every night, sleepless nights, just playing out scenarios in your head. Even that morning, I remember like going to the JCC to get shots up in the morning, and like I came home and there was still like a ton of time, and I was just like freaking out. Like, you kind of want to get there already. But yeah, that was just a special game. Like, that's something that, not everyone gets to experience. So it was definitely great. In terms of the actual game, that last year's North Shore team was very special. They were very commanding. Their defense was tough. They were long. And I think a lot of us, including the Alexes, the Isaacs, the Michael Green, Matt Schwartz, I think we felt like we just didn't put it all out there, and that was the toughest thing. I'll never forget in the locker room after the game, we all just went in. Coach was like still on the court, whatever, and there was like 5 minutes of just like the loudest silence I've ever felt in my life. Everyone just sitting there, everyone's just crying. And then, there were some not nice words said, just not directed at anyone, just letting out frustration. But Alex got up, and credit to him, like he was a real leader, as mad as he was. And, he definitely carried a lot of us throughout the season and in that game, but he just kind of tried to channel everything towards Sarachek and said, like, remember how we're feeling right now, because we have one chance to change it forever, which was a message that definitely stuck with me. And just in terms of playing with Alex throughout the year, he's a very special talent. I mean, not even just in games, like the things that like you guys and no one really sees in practice, like the things he did were just incredible in terms of playmaking, scoring. But he was very fun to play with at the same time. Like he's a very fun kid. He was a good leader. Like, sometimes kids with that talent and that much hype and that much love, like everyone, we kind of knew, like when we're going to a packed crowd, most people are just there to watch Alex, but he never made us feel that way. And it was just great to play with him. I learned a lot from him for sure. And Isaac too, he kind of got overlooked at times, but he was also a great leader and he also very talented player too. So shout out to him.
It's funny, Roni, one thing you said, which is true, and I say this as, when dealing with kids and getting to that championship game, I go, the best part about it is when you clinch the victory in the semifinals, knowing that you're headed to the championship. Because as you said, that week is just like pressure, this and that. Everyone's talking about you. It's just to enjoy that moment that you're going to play in the championship, because it's just a week of a buildup. You need to appreciate that moment, which it sounds like, you really did, either afterwards or even in the moment. And kudos to Alex to be able to get you guys together after that game to really, set your sights on, you still had one more goal and you guys made a fabulous run at Sarachek. So that's some good stuff. Question for you with regards to current Yeshiva League. We're going to take away Alex Zakheim, no teammates allowed. Who are the three best shooters that you feel are in the Yeshiva League today? Could be JV to varsity, whatever level you see. No teammates counted, so you don't have to make any enemies in your own squad. Top three shooters in the league.
This year or?
Yeah, I mean, within the past 2-3 years. Don't give us like someone from 3 years ago, but yeah.
All right, so the first one, I forgot his name.
Describe him. I'll get him. Describe him. We'll get him.
It was at Satrin on Makor Chaim, I think, the lefty.
Oh yeah,
John Rosen.
Poppers.
John Rosen.
And he drained, like, I remember in Sarachek too.
Yeah, he was against SAR. He was 9 for 13, and one of those.
Yeah, I mean that was
the end of the game.
That was just insane.
Good call.
Yeah, that's when like Yeshiva League shooting comes to mind. Like instantly, I just remember it. Like we played against him and we couldn't stop him either. He was just nailing them. The second one I'm gonna go with on Flatbush. They have. I think he was a freshman last year. Jamal is his last name.
Yeah, Sammy Jamal, sophomore this year.
Shout out to him. He was draining them from like Curry range. He was also an amazing shooter. Who's the last one? Let's think. Who's a good Noah Freundlich. Hafter. Shout out to him. He's lights out. Can't if he's open at all, he's gonna hit it.
All right, good answers. All great shooters, and you really covered it.
I can attest that John Rosen is a very good shooter. Fun kid to be around. Curious, we've talked a lot about Frisch and also now about other kids. But I want to talk about you individually as a player. You're not like the most athletic player, but you're really crafty and you have good footwork. So I'm curious, how did that evolve? Where did that come from? Who do you model that after?
All right. So I'm a Nets fan. And growing up I'm still growing up obviously, but like when I was prime, like really, really into basketball and Nets, that was when D'Lo was running the Nets team. And I think he's also, not the most athletic guy at all. He's pretty slow and whatever.
Lefty, right?
Yeah, lefty too. And I was a massive Nets fan, and I always remember in my old house, I had like in the basement a mini basketball court, and I would always like watch Nets games and then go and I would just like do what he was doing and like try to act like I was basically pretending to be him. But I think like as childish as it sounds, I think it reflects a lot of my game, and I think like I did learn a lot from him, just like mimicking the things he did. So D'Lo, I think I modeled my game after him a solid amount. As a lefty, I love Harden too. Before now that he left the Nets, I don't really like him anymore, but whatever. And trying to think. Yeah, I think those two, they're very crafty. He's also not the most athletic anymore. But yeah, I think definitely recognizing that I wasn't going to be the fastest, most athletic kid. I think that definitely helped me a lot. Like I'm not going to lie.
Right, and by the lack of athleticism is not a negative on your game, because it's funny.
Yeah.
Knowing no, I'm being serious. Knowing that when people are guarding you, you're like, he's not going to run by me, but you still get to the hoop. So that's a testament to you and using the angles and the dribble and the part of your game, which is great. Final question for me. I don't know if Poppers has anything else, but what has been your biggest achievement playing basketball? Could be middle school up through high school, and who would you say is your biggest role model or influence on yourself as an athlete?
I think my biggest achievement in basketball wise, I would say, is making the championship last year. I think I was lucky enough to play a solid amount on that team. So even though I was a junior, I felt like I was really a part of it. And like I said earlier, that's something that you really will never forget. Like I remember standing with coach during the national anthem, and that's like the only time before the game where you really get a moment to just take it all in. And I remember just looking around and just saying like I want to take a mental picture of this and just never forget it, because I don't know if I'll ever be, I hope to be back there this season, but you never know what's going to happen. So, and that's just a big achievement, especially, it was a tough season. We had some early losses that really, weren't great for us, but we bounced back nice. And I think the perseverance that we showed, and, it was like a hard road. So getting over that and getting to the championship, that was definitely a big achievement. In terms of role model, I'm gonna say my dad, generic answer, but not obviously for the generic reasons of he's a good example and all that stuff, but just basketball wise, he claims he was a solid player. I don't know, never seen it, but just the mindset that he has about my game specifically. Like I always come home after a game, he always has a lot to say. He kind of, he always tells me not to leave anything on the court, to be very confident and commanding and kind of control the game and make sure that no matter what I do, I'm not going to regret anything. And I think that's something that no matter what, every game, no matter the outcome, I try to make sure that I leave everything on the court. And I definitely got that from him.
Got it. Well, that is true. Pops, you have anything else for Roni or?
Well, the championship was broadcast by Max Live, so hopefully there's some good close-up something for you to keep a mental image of what happened beyond.
I got some good pictures.
Not as good as Isaac's pictures, but a good screenshot.
Yeah,
at least.
Shout out Isaac Grayson too.
Yeah,
great photographer.
Yeah, well, listen, Roni, you were awesome. Thank you for joining us. You are the CoolKippahs.com Player of the Week. You're going to get a gift certificate to Cool Kippahs. You can get even maybe put yourself into that Kippah exclusive to get one of those drops. But continued success on the season. You're a wonderful kid on and off the court. It's great to see you have success, and we hope to see you guys continue to rise and make a statement throughout the season. So congratulations, and we'll see you down the road.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You got it. And now let's get to it. The Camp Lavi Power Rankings. A lot of movement here this week, and we're going to jump right into it. It's been a great week or two of basketball. So we start with number 19. We're going to go through the the bottom tier of the rankings pretty quickly. We got Kushner staying at number 19, Rambam at 18, MTA at 17. Kudos MTA for giving Frisch a good contest earlier in the week. So they are starting to put a little better game planning together, and they were able to maintain a close deficit. Then we have the Hank Hurricanes, who also competing wise they're doing their thing, but right now just a little short on the end results. And then we got YDE. We have Hillel, who had a nice upset win. And we're going to talk about if it's really an upset anymore, as they beat Heschel earlier in the week. So then we have the JEC Thunder. And then we have Waterbury, who has been, the team that we thought they've been all season competing, but ultimately it kind of falls apart at the end. And then here we go, as we get into our top 10. We have probably the biggest faller of the week, the Heschel Heat. Tough week. They had definitely two losses, right? They lost to Orr most recently, and prior to that was who did they lose to?
To Hillel. Yeah.
To Hillel, right.
Yeah, so, and before that, I think, Heschel fell from 6, I think, down to 11.
Right.
I don't want to say I saw it coming in terms of the results. I didn't think they would lose. Certainly both of these last two games. But at the Weimer tournament, something kind of looked off. So they're certainly in a slump. They're playing different ball than they did beforehand.
Right.
But sometimes, you can watch a team and just miss how good they are, and you'll just look at the results. I don't think that's what this is. I do think that they are a different team right now than they were earlier in the year. They kind of lost their mojo a little bit. So they'll have to look to get it back. But there's absolutely no way we could not drop them far down in the rankings for this week.
By the way, Akiva, I don't know. It could be the Yeshiva League Pass tip-off podcast curse. I mean, we brought Hunter in, and since then he was a great interview, but the season has projected the wrong way. But
Frisch is going to have a bad week, I think.
Right, exactly. So if we start getting rejected on our players of the week, we'll understand. We won't take it personally. It'll be just something we understand. So so Heschel is number 11. At number 10, Ori Yisrael with they had a mixed results week. They lost to SAR, but they bounced back nicely and defeated Heschel pretty comfortably. They won by I believe 10 points or so, and they kind of maintained they were in control most of that game. So Ori Yisrael again is gonna give some teams some fits, and obviously they took down Heschel.
Yeah, they got good contributions from Yurmi and Ruvain again, and also Shmusi had a good game for them. So if they can consistently have three guys who can score at a high rate, that'll obviously make them more dangerous than if they just have one or two weapons.
Right, absolutely. And then at number 9, we have SAR, who beat the aforementioned Ori Yisrael, and they lost to the Ramaz Rams. So again, a mixed results. I guess when you're in that middle tier, you're going to have you beat the teams you're supposed to beat, but when you step up the level of competition via the rankings or just how they're viewed throughout the league, you got to come through with that. But SAR, solid team. Again, we've discussed them before. Not their strongest team as definitely the past 2 years. But again, no one's taking that game lightly. When you play SAR, you're in for it, and you got to be ready for it, because they also have their injuries that they've overcome now. They have their full squad back to full strength.
I think the word solid sums them up very well. Yeah.
Right. That is. And then we have at number 8, we have the DRS Wildcats, who, we're going to really, it's funny. Keep and I, we've talked about it. We don't really know what they are. We can't make it. They went to TABC. They beat them. They played the Magans or the Flatbushes, and they got, Flatbush for sure, and they got smacked. But we just know DRS, and we know they're good, and we just know that they're gonna, they're an enigma right now. We don't know if they're too high, too low, but they're kind of we have to see the results, once they play on the games.
Yeah, I mean, as we've mentioned before, when the talent gap is too big, they struggle. I mean, Flatbush, the final score is not indicative of how much they got blown out in that game. I mean, it was Flatbush really wiped the floor in that game with DRS. But there, obviously, the talent gap was too big. I thought the talent gap with Hefter wasn't too big, and it was. But just, again, because of how well they defend and the chemistry they have, they will beat solid teams.
Correct. Especially in the greenhouse when they play some of those better teams, per se. on the greenhouse will obviously help them.
Yeah, I don't think some of these results are surprising. It's basketball, right? Sometimes you have good days, sometimes you have bad days. Obviously, in the past week or two, they've had a couple of bad days. But I'm still fairly confident this is a top 10 team. Not a threat to make a run deep. I don't think they're going to make a championship game or even really like a semifinals. But I expect them to make the playoffs.
Absolutely, and I think at number 7, as we head there, it's the TABC Storm, and I think the same thing, right? We just don't know how good they are because they had the early slip up against Heschel. They lost to DRS. They haven't really played the meat of their schedule yet. So unfortunately for them, they have 2 losses that could have been 2 victories. So they're kind of a little behind the 8 ball as far as seedings, right now. But they control their own destiny, obviously, because they play all the teams above them as the season progresses. And again, we know Coach Oz is one of the best coaches in the league. We know that Kindle era in the talent they have. So they're, again, an enigma just because they've kind of played somewhat less games than other schools have played thus far.
Yeah, certainly with TBC, I would more so agree with the sentiment that I don't know what they are, just because I haven't seen enough. I think they're different from DRS in that respect. I legitimately they have some growing pains still to get through. They looked really good in their game against Orr last week on Sunday. But still, it's a youngish team, which is still figuring it out. I think you would agree, Ari, also that they have certainly the potential to go on a run here.
Absolutely.
But obviously there are some other concerning signs.
Right.
It's still early. It's mid-December.
It's actually, in my opinion, I think kind of the opposite. When you said DRS, you can't foresee them in a championship game. I wouldn't be shocked to see TABC in the championship game. It's not, they're not a top 3 team right now, but if you told me in 2 months from now they're in the championship, I'd be like, yeah, I can see that. They have the talent, they have the horses. It's just a matter of, we have to see it on the court. And then at number 6, we have, this is also a dropper, is the Hafter Hawks. So they had a tough week. They had 3 games this past week, took care of Rambam, as most teams do. And then they had went into North Shore in the Lions Den, and they were bitten and swallowed by the North Shore Lions. I mean, I think Hafter was a sacrificial lamb for the hungry North Shore Lions.
Yes.
ready to show that we are at full strength. We need victories, and they took care of business and ended up winning that game by 25. I know Peter Drucker, their big fellow, didn't play, so the size discrepancy with the North Shore bigs and the Hafter wings is obviously it's a lot, but they annihilated them, and I think it showed us a lot about North Shore, who we'll talk about in a minute. But I think Hafter then followed that game up against Ramaz this past Saturday night, where they came out really with a great start again without Drucker, went up by 15 points, and Ramaz was able to come back and ended up winning by about 6 to 8 points. And a game that Hafter really was in control for a long time. And I think the thing that's going to struggle with Hafter is that they're going to have to rely so much on Kevin Levy to score a lot of points, and Kevin's a superstar. But ultimately, he's going to see a lot of junk defenses. He's going to see some box and ones. And I think it's going to be, they're going to have to show some other things. I mean, what do you think about Hafter where they are right now?
Yeah, it feels very tough to be this harsh on them, given Drucker's absence, because, he's a huge difference maker in terms of how teams are able to defend. And North Shore's situation, specifically attack, also just because of the size they possess with Abizadeh and with Zarka. There was no choice really here.
We did talk about it. We did go back and forth.
But ultimately, there's no way we couldn't drop them below North Shore. You can't lose to a team by 25 points and then lose in your next game, which was another opportunity against a quality team, and have a strong argument to remain above the team, which just beat you by 25 points. But I don't think there's so much room for them to fall from here. As we know, they are a talented bunch, and they do have scoring options outside of Levy. But not having Drucker on the floor was obviously a big negative for them this past week, and they're not going to go anywhere unless he's healthy.
Right, absolutely. And then at number 5, our biggest riser of the week is the North Shore Lions. So North Shore has, I saw Coach Shalom at a game the other night, and I go, no one wants to see North Shore in the playoffs. I go, they will be the most dangerous 6th seed, 5th seed, whatever, ultimately, and they still have a tough schedule.
Yeah,
so,
right. If they make the playoffs, yeah.
Right. Which if we were a betting man, if I was betting my Hanukkah Gelts, I would actually say I'd say that they'll figure out a way to make the playoffs. I think, even though they're behind the 8 ball and then really in a hole with the 0-4 start, but right. I think their talent and the hunger now. And it's funny, Coach Shalom said something to me. He said, he didn't realize that the heavy minutes that they played last year, because they were really a 5 to 6 man team. He said, and they played a lot of games. He said they played all those minutes, even though they're 17 years old. It's a lot of basketball. It's like in their big bodies, those guys, Zarka and Abizadeh. So he said it really factors into it. He thinks right now they're kind of getting their feet under them again, and unfortunately for the rest of the league. And as you saw by the North Shore game, they have a huge game coming up with Flatbush. So we're going to see what they are about, but we know the potential. And I think it's warranted. That 25-point defeat of Hafter, and again, they controlled it from beginning to end. That 25 could have been 40. I mean, it was like one of those dominant efforts.
Yeah.
I think it showed us that they're back.
Yeah, and the win against Hank also, the final margin was 18, but I think it was 22 at halftime already. So they're also the final margin, not so indicative of how dominant they were. And, obviously Hank is not one of the top teams in the league. But it wasn't like, they're up by 5 after 1. No, they're up by 10 after 2. They're up by, right. They controlled that game from start until they kind of, gave up a little bit and let the guys come out. We were kind of waiting on North Shore. They're kind of lying in the wings, waiting for us to jump them up. And how could you not, just based on how they looked this past week? But I certainly, I know how good they are. I know how good they can be, but their schedule is still no joke. They get Flatbush. If they lose that, they're 2-5, and they still have to play, I think, Mac and David twice and DRS twice.
And Hafter again. They got, doesn't get easy. So, but you know what? As I said, they won the championship last year. You get that championship schedule the following year. So
and it might end up costing them. But certainly, if they make the playoffs, they will be as dangerous as anyone.
Right. And then at number 4, our player of the week squad, the Frisch Cougars, who had probably one of the most impressive victories of the season when they went to Mag and David. And again, talk about taking care of business from beginning of the game to the end. Double-digit lead throughout the game. I think they ended up winning by 16 to 18 points. Didn't feel close. I mean, I was watching the game a little here and there, as you were as well. And they were just in control, picking apart their defense, really exploiting their bigs against the Magan team, who's out without Haber, one of their bigs. So obviously that factored into it, and we'll talk about Magan as we move up here. But Frisch, solid on steady ground. They had that game against MTA where they won. They weren't impressive, but again, I take that with a grain of salt. Sometimes you get up for the big dogs and you kind of go down to play the level of your opponents.
Yeah, it's so this is maybe a place where we differ a little bit. I didn't think that there was any reason to drop Frisch, but I gave it a little bit, like in terms of who's going to be ahead of them. We were going to move North Shore up 6 spots just based off of 1 or 2 games, and after obviously had to drop. But they have played to the level of competition. I mean, it's just a fact at this point. The MTA game, they did not play well. They were down, I think, even in the second quarter. It was 5-point game in the fourth. Before
it was a game. MTA was like a bucket away from like really believing they could win that game.
Right. It's not the first time, right? They also against Hillel, they were down at the half and ended up winning by 7. And sandwich in between were the Ramaz and the Mag and David games. But it's absolutely a concerning sign. And there's a reason why we were hesitant to move Frisch higher up in the rankings, until once you have the results there, we got to move you up in the rankings. But there's absolutely a reason why we were hesitant to do so. And it's because the fact that they haven't been able to just go out there and take care of business against lower level competition for the most part. Even when they played North Shore, when North Shore was not at full strength,
Right. That was North Shore's game to win.
Right. And like, when we're doing these rankings, their win against North Shore was against the North Shore team, which was not good. It wasn't against the number 5 North Shore team. It was against the number 10 North Shore team. And they won by 3. They barely squeaked it out against a North Shore team, which was struggling just generally. So it's certainly something of concern, which we need to keep an eye out on. They play Heschel next week on Sunday. So that'll be kind of a situation of a team which seems to have figured it out versus a team which is now going through struggles. If you asked maybe 3 weeks ago who would win that game, I would have said, I don't know. The game is at Frisch, so that might help them. But
I think that should be a Frisch W.
You would think so, right?
You would think, right? But I wouldn't be shocked if Heschel won. I mean, you're right. Absolutely, exactly to your point. So we'll see.
So it's something we need to monitor over the next few weeks going into winter break. If they can fix that up, or if maybe the Mac and David game and even the Ramaz games were anomalies where they were just so upset at how they were being seen that they just went out with another level of anger. And took it out on those quality opponents. So we shall see.
Right. And now probably the team who has the biggest gripe to be dropped in the rankings is Ramaz. They were number 2 last week. They're number 3 this week. They're on probably a 6 or 7 game win streak. They just beat Frisch, SAR, and Hafter 3 games in a row, and we decided to drop them. So we'll talk about why in a second. But they've been impressive. They've really been winning games. They've kind of, their season in overall, they're having a great season. Every game they may be behind, but they come back and they find a way to win and pick up their defense. Really, again, they're also settling in on their scoring. They're trying to get Kushner and Ohayon getting going together. The 2 big guys, Ed and Bracha, had a really strong game against Hafter. So they're playing really well. And it's not indicative of them dropping in the rankings. It's going to be who we're going to talk about next. But they've been playing well. They are a for sure championship contender. They actually, as we were talking, they're going to be hosting a tournament this week, the Sam Guinness tournament, and it's going to be a heavyweight tournament. It's going to be Hafter, Mag and David, North Shore, and Ramaz. So that's on the boys' side, and there's a girls' side as well. But the boys' side that's going to be big games. Obviously, they're not Yeshiva League, record games, but they're games to test yourself against some big schools. But they've just been playing really well. They're coached well, and obviously, I think the sky's the limit for them. But what have you seen this past week that has shown us not why we dropped them, but what we've liked about their wins?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to add. They continue to just get it done. None of these wins against good competition have been dominant. They haven't gone out and just smacked the team, been up by 20 or 25 after 3 quarters, but they continue to just play well together as a team. We, as we'll explain, we had no we had a choice, but we didn't really have a choice.
We had a choice, but we thought, based on if for
on the full body of work,
who's left.
based on the full body of work, we didn't really have a choice. Dropping them is not because of anything they did negatively.
Right, absolutely. So they come in at number 3. Now the top 2, obviously, we're left with Flatbush and Mag and David. And they just had a battle, the other night down in Flatbush, and Mag and David ended up winning by 18 points. So finally, this is the first time this season we have a new number 1. So at number 2 this week, we have the Flatbush Falcons, and Flatbush is. There's not enough superlatives in the world to talk about how good we think they are and how good they can be. But I think this just shows you with them, maybe not even, I would say, on cruise control, because when they're playing Magan, their records could be 0-10, 0-10. That's going to be, a classic game because of the rivalry. But I think they did suffer somewhat of an injury to Sammy Jamal, the sharp shooting sophomore. Before we're showing it to him, he's not a main player in their team, but he does give them some depth and some outside shooting. So I don't know. I think they're going to be right there throughout the season. I can't see them dropping lower than 3 at any point during the season in the rankings, but they're everything we think they are. They got beaten by Magan, and we'll talk about Magan in a sec. But what are your thoughts on Flatbush as they come in at number 2 in our rankings?
Yeah. I mean, the final score wasn't so indicative of the game itself. I mean, 18 I think was the biggest deficit. It was 3 going into the fourth quarter, but they kind of looked exhausted, both physically and mentally. And I think they missed 10 straight free throws.
Wow.
In the stretch. Like to end the game, they were 7 for 11 to start, and then they finished 7 for 21. And that I think sums up how well Magan David played against Flatbush's aggressive man-to-man. I mean, everything kind of spiraled out of control towards the end. I have no doubt that this is still a very, very good team. I want something which I will note is that, we're kind of doing 2 and 1 together here, again, for like the 5th straight week. But Jack Haber was finally back, and Magan is now 2-0 against Flatbush when Haber plays. In the one loss,
a lot of pressure on Haber.
Well, hopefully he's healthy when they play again next. When they play for the 4th time, there's a legitimate possibility they're going to play 6 times this year. We could play Magan David preseason, Cooper 2 times in the regular season, 1 time in the playoffs, and 1 time in Sarachek, potentially. So, I mean, it's fun watching these 2 teams play.
Absolutely.
That's just something which I'll note. But yeah, I mean, before, like if we were doing this show a week ago, I would have just been like, hey, they just played YDE, and I mean, YDE couldn't get up a shot. And then they played DRS, and DRS couldn't get up a shot.
Right.
They couldn't get up they couldn't, they must have had
I think it's
shot.
Right. I think it shows you just the level of competition. Like the tier, like we think that Flatbush, Magan, it probably may be in a tier of their own, although Magan with that loss to Frisch kind of, opened our eyes a little bit. But again, sans Jackie Haber. But, again, I guess this will just segue right in because we're talking about Magan. So obviously Magan David is our number 1 this week. And, Magan David went into Flatbush, and again, it wasn't an 18-point victory. I mean, it was obviously, but it was, like you said, a 3-point game or so in the fourth quarter. But, it was the first time all season we saw Flatbush, even in their loss, when they lost to Magan David in the Magan David tournament, Flatbush actually, looked out of sorts. Magan really spooked them. And I think you saw the talent in the horses that Magan has. Smecky, Sardar, Haber, Shabbat, guys who can really score. And that's really tough. And obviously, they can defend as well. And they just, as bad as they looked against Frisch the previous week was as great as they looked against Flatbush. And that is why, we have them at number 1 and, really, setting up nicely for the rest of the season.
Yeah. I mean, I'd also note, I mean, again, just kind of doing 1 and 2 together here. Sometimes it can be good. Sometimes it can be bad to take losses. I mean,
I think it's good as someone who coaches. Honestly, when you have a loss like this, it's kind of a wake up. Like we're number 1 in this. We've won 18 games in a row. Whatever it is, it kind of like these are kids. You read your press clippings. It definitely factors into it. And I agree with what you're saying.
Now it could spiral. They could play North Shore, lose, go have back-to-back losses, and Vermont's coming up next week. Like it could spiral out of control. But yeah, it also could be a good wake up call. A good hey, we aren't we can't just cakewalk this. For Flatbush, and obviously for Magan. I mean, when Haber plays, it looked great. So
yes, and I think the key also is and we've discussed this off air. I think when Haber plays, Smecky doesn't feel he needs to do everything. Sometimes Smecky's a superstar player, but he's a one-on-one player. He creates his own shot. He drives. He creates his shot off the dribble, which not a lot of high school yeshiva leaguers can do. And I think when he sees Haber, Sardar, Shabbat, Cher, when he sees those guys, all of a sudden that team concept and Spike and Benny and Morris, they do a great job. I think that also says to him, I don't need to be this guy who's taking all the shots. I can rely on my teammates as well.
Yeah, and I actually think Smecky played the worst game of the season last night. And then, but they didn't need him. I think to start the fourth, he was on the bench. Jakey Akaranchi was in for him, and then he came back in afterwards. Maybe like a message, just we don't need you to be aggressive here to win this game. But that also says another thing, that the fact that Smecky looked so out of sorts last night, yet they were still dominant ultimately, or at least they were in control of the game without him. They don't need him to be the do-it-all player when they have.
He needs to play within himself, because he is a superstar talent, a super talent. So he has that ability. But I think, and also, kudos to Flatbush for their sold-out crowd. They had, the crowd was overflowing. There were kids in the rafters, up top, down low, on the court. And look, Smecky's never played in that, really, right? He hasn't played in that atmosphere. I know he went to Hillel, and Hillel doesn't really have a rival, I would say, especially being so far away from most other schools. So I think, not that the moment's too big for him, because he's a great ball player, but I think, that's a lot when you see all those kids, your friends, your peers, it's a big game, and he'll be fine. We don't need to give him reasons to play better. He's a great player, but I think Magan said they've moved all the way up after we had a big drop. They really showed us, and they took care of business. And at number one in our power rankings, the Magan David Warriors. And again, next time we meet, we'll see. This is going to be like movers, shakers, a lot of big games coming up. So Those are our power rankings. I mean, any last thoughts on that, Akiva, before?
I think we've talked plenty.
Right. So now let's go into our Holy Schnitzel Plays of the Week. Actually, I'm sorry. The Plays of the Week are brought to you by the Plays of the Week. And here they are.
Yeshiva League Pass top plays, beginning in 3, 2, 1.
Lefty driving in. Nakano was pushed. Nakano getting upset. Blocked by Manne! Rejected!
Oh, that's a shame. That's okay.
Offensive rebound. High up for three. No good. Oh, another rebound.
Wow. Plays of the week. I mean, it's funny. The plays of the week are so great. And obviously, shout out to Beni Keda, who, again, every week has maintained has shown us why he's a player, such a high acclaim as he, has these dunks and these amazing plays. But really, the plays of the week, you go through it. We go through it and we have a lot of people who vote on it. There's some great submissions who just don't get it, get in because of these plays of the week. So kudos to everyone who did that and, performed on that level this past couple of weeks. And again, send us in and we'll see what we have next. So now for our next segment, our Holy Schnitzel Game of the Week, as I always make that mistake, but it's the Holy Schnitzel Game of the Week. And this is going to be a big one coming up on Monday night next week. We have the Ramaz Rams taking on the Flatbush Falcons. So in our power rankings, it's the 2 versus 3. The game will be at Ramaz. They played each other earlier in the season at the Magan David tournament in a thriller. Flatbush won in overtime by 5 points. Great game. And it's going to be a big test. We'll see what happens. Flatbush coming off the North Shore game. We'll see how that goes down. But this is just a clash of two really good teams, good coaches, a lot of good ball players. I think on the Flatbush side, you kind of know you're going to get in your face, man-to-man, high-pressure defense. They have a lot of shot makers. I think the key to their first game was the stellar play of Isaac Cooper had a great game. Beni Keda, he's going to fall asleep and have 15 points. And if he awakens, he's going to have 25. I mean, you kind of know what he's going to do, but I think it's those other guys who really step up for them. So that's what I look for in the Flapper side. And Ramaz is, they're going to have to get a lot of scoring from a lot of different players. I think they're best when they are, when they have a lot of kids scoring between 8 to 15 points, as most teams are. I think, Magnum's the same way. When you spread the ball out and you make yourselves, a threat from all over the court, it's really tough. It's going to be a great game. What do you think it's as far as what are your thoughts before we get into your predictions? What are your thoughts in this game and what to look for?
Yeah, I think just in terms of this game specifically, trying to figure out who to pick, it's really good for Flatbush that they're playing this game next Monday and not this Monday, meaning the Monday 2 days after the Mag and David game. The fact that North Shore is a very difficult opponent too. But just specifically figuring out how to pick this game, the fact they have North Shore and then Hank also afterwards to get right. So unless they lose both those, it won't be a blood in the water game. I think that makes a huge difference for Flatbush, because if this game was right after the Mac and David game, I'd probably pick Ramaz.
Okay, so I guess we can get right into your prediction then. If you're teasing us with your prediction, what do you see? What's the right now? And we'll have to say so far I'm 1-1. You're 0-2. I got the what was our second game of the week? The halfter.
Halfter.
Right.
Yeah.
We were both wrong on our first game of what was the first game? It was North Shore Frisch, right?
Yeah, North Shore Frisch. That was a 3-point game, and then
still a loss. It's still an L.
Yeah, this past game we thought was gonna be close, and it just wasn't close.
Right.
But you got the right pick.
Right. All right. So we'll let you go first here. Ramaz Flatbush. What is your prediction? Who do you see coming out with the victory on that game?
I'm going to take Flatbush by 8. I think that Flatbush is the better team. Even with how they played against Mag and David this past game, and even with the Jamal injury, they're slightly more talented, and I think just in terms of their ability to defend again, we didn't see it on Saturday night for the most part, but their ability to defend on such a high level against quality teams and really wear you down, which I'll say for last time, they ended up wearing themselves down against Mag and David. But I think that will be a difference maker in this one, given how many games each of these teams are going to be playing right before this matchup. Right, it's not like they're both going to come in fresh.
No.
So I think both teams will be tired. I do think Flatbush is the better team. And from a matchup standpoint, I don't see any specific reasons to believe that Ramaz matches up significantly better than the typical opponent would with Flatbush. So that's what I'll pick. I don't want to overthink it again because all of these game of the weeks are
they're games of the week for a reason.
There's a reason why they're game of the week. And it's basketball, so anything can happen also. Flatbush.
All right. So it's funny. You were going through that, and I kind of was thinking, is Akiva starting to doubt himself as he talks more? I see I
can't talk too much. I can't.
Right, because then you're talking yourself into wait. Let me see. So this is obviously a game very close to the heart, and you know what? I think kind of what you said before. Ramaz is going to be coming off the Sam Guinness tournament starting Thursday night, goes through Sunday if they're in the championship Sunday. 4 to 5 games over a short stretch of time against heavy, talented teams. I think it's actually going to help them against Flatbush. I think it's going to, barring an injury, everyone's healthy. I think it's really going to, those high level games in the intensity in that environment, I think it's going to set them up for another big game the following, the Monday right after. I think Ramaz wins this game by 3 points. I agree with you. I think Flatbush is favored in the game. I really do. And I don't think most people will tell you otherwise. I think they have probably the most talent in the league. Maybe Magan has an argument to say there about the from 1 to 10 on their team. But I think that Ramaz is going to, this game has been circled on their calendar. It's their second out of conference game. They took care of Hafter at Hafter. And I think if they win this game, it really sets them up nicely to hopefully get that number 1 seed for them as they, 8-1 right now. They win that game, they'll be 9-1 with, still a couple of big games left. But I'm going to pick Ramaz to win. Not an exact score, but I think it's like a 53-50. I wouldn't even be shocked if it's overtime, but I think Ramaz prevails in a slight upset and takes care of business. So that is our Holy Schnitzel game of the week. And wow, it was a full show. This was great. We had, first of all, thank you to our sponsors, Cool Kippahs, Kippahs _exclusive, who's having their first drop coming out. Get there. They have exclusive limited edition Kippahs. Follow them on Instagram. It's really cool. They're doing different things, different collaborations. Cool Kippahs is, your Judaic stuff. You follow the website, and they sponsor our players of the week. And then Holy Schnitzel, who, every time I say it, I get hungry. I mean, obviously, with the array of food that they have. So Holy Schnitzel, Cool Kippahs, thank you for the sponsorship. Again, we are looking for some more sponsors. So, reach out to us on Instagram, Popper's email. You can Poppers at YeshivaLeaguePass.com. Did I finally get it right?
There you go.
All right, there's a victory for me. So, and Roni Huemann, wow, what a great interview. I mean, really, that was some great stuff. Very impressive young man, and great stuff. We look forward to our next player of the week, and it's open. It's wide open. We're waiting to see what happens, what transpires. Who makes the big shots, the teams that are really making big statements, big victories. And also, just want to end one thing. I just want to say kudos throughout the Yeshiva League. I've been to a lot of games. Everyone is, Am Yisrael Chai. I mean, everyone is really supporting Israel and everything that's going on there. At Hafter the other night, they had a beautiful video to really show what they're doing. I know at all these games, the national anthems are being played. So, these kids, it's nice to see them have an opportunity to kind of grow up a little and realize that basketball is awesome. It's a game, but there's obviously, bigger things in life. So that's it. That's my spiel. Thank you for joining us. Yeshiva League Pass Tip-Off Podcast, episode number 4 is in the books. Have a good one.